Hello and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. Just give me a second and I will toggle on live streaming. So this live streams on all our platforms. So just give me a second. And thanks everyone for joining. We really appreciate you all joining. Looks like we're good to go for the live stream as well. Awesome. It looks like we're all set. So thanks everyone for joining. And today's webinar is also a product launch. It's called SingleStore Flow, the no-code tool for effortless data migration and CDC. Imagine transforming your data migration process from a multi-day challenge into a seamless no-code experience that delivers results in hours or even minutes, maybe it depends. So we have Eric from our product team, and he's a director of product management here at SingleStore. And with a very cool panel that can answer any questions that you have. We have experts on board, Akmal and Dylan. Thanks for joining. And uh, if you have any questions related to the product or during the webinar, just let us know. We'll take care of it. So with SingleStore Flow, you can effortlessly move schema data from major sources like SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL. Eric, just correct me if I'm wrong, and Postgres into SingleStore, and you can accelerate your migration and establish efficient CDC pipelines that can keep your data fresh and actionable. So thanks for joining, and I'll actually have Eric to talk more about all this. And you might notice that there is a Q&A button that is present at the bottom of your console, and you can use that button to address any questions that you all may have. Just note that you are currently in a listen only mode, and that will be the only way that you will be able to ask your questions. So we make it sure that we answer all the audience questions during the webinar live, utilizing our panel. So uh, feel free to use that button, and to have a real-time experience, I will provide you all the resources during the webinar. So just sit back and relax, and everything will be provided to you. And Eric, please take it away. Thanks everyone for joining once again.
Yukti, thank you. Yeah, I'm Eric Hanson. I'm a director of product management here at SingleStore, and I'm really excited to tell you today about SingleStore Flow, which is a no-code tool to allow you to effortlessly migrate data and do CDC into SingleStore from those databases that Yukti just mentioned, and we'll go into that in more detail in this presentation. So last fall, SingleStore acquired BrightFlow, and that's where these tools that I'm going to talk about today came from. So BrightFlow is a tool to allow real-time, no-code, automated data transfer and change data capture from source databases to target databases, and we're focusing now on several source databases with one target, and that is SingleStore. And that's both SingleStore Helios as well as SingleStore self-hosted. Some background about the company. BrightFlow is really interesting. They have strong partnership and referral capabilities. So, they've partnered with all the things you see on the left, all the organizations you see on the left, and got a number of large enterprise customers and strong referral and partner customer acquisition. So I'm not going to go through all of those, but there's some Fortune 500 size customers that are using BrightFlow today. And we're continuing to support the BrightFlow customers that came on board with this acquisition. But for technology development going forward, we're strongly focusing on the SingleStore target. So just as an example of the kind of customers that BrightFlow has today and the things that they've been able to do, Origin is an interesting customer in the Australian energy market. So they're unlocking large volumes of complex enterprise data, including SAP, allowing them to migrate data from Oracle and other sources into a cloud data warehouse and data lake target. So they had some challenges with the data and data movement process, and that their infrastructure couldn't handle the rising analytical demand. And there were SAP data silos hosted on Oracle that needed urgently to be integrated with other enterprise data. And they were struggling to do that. They looked at Oracle GoldenGate and Qlik Replicate, which just couldn't handle the data volume that they wanted to be able to handle. Data was fragmented, so they were able to use BrightFlow to integrate the data from those SAP and Oracle sources onto a cloud data warehouse and data lake without writing any code. So they didn't have to write code in order to do this data transfer. And it's enabled some new analytics and ML solutions for them. So another customer of BrightFlow that has achieved success is Siemens. So they wanted to migrate information from over 3,000 customer databases that were in SQL Server into a cloud data warehouse target. And so that enabled them to simplify a very complex data integration problem and provide scalable, low latency replication of updates from well over those 3,000 customer databases that I mentioned. So, and a couple other customers have achieved similar results as well, including OptiMove and Extensive. So that's just a little background on the kind of customer success that BrightFlow has had, and now those are our customers of SingleStore. So why did we buy BrightFlow? What benefit does SingleStore expect to get out of this acquisition and the new technology we're able to deliver as part of that? So there's technology, agility, and cost benefits. So again, the technology has been vetted by AWS. BrightFlow is an AWS advanced technology partner, and they've proven that they can take market share away and win against established established data transfer technology products like GoldenGate, Fivetran, and Qlik Replicate. And we pride ourselves in the BrightFlow team. Now it's the SingleStore Flow team of being agile, being able to respond quickly with new features or changes to enable a customer to do what they need to do. So, and we have strong support capabilities. And finally, cost-wise, a huge benefit in terms of cost reduction compared with competing products is just ease of use, because it's a no-code tool. So you'll see me demonstrate it at the end of this presentation. You just connect to your source, you connect to your target, you do some configurations, you click a couple buttons, and you're transferring data. So you do not have to write code in order to benefit from this. And that compares favorably to some of the alternative products. And also, we're pricing it economically compared to those three other products. So the technical architecture is a very high-level picture, but we currently support these four SQL database sources: PostgreSQL, Oracle, MySQL, and Microsoft SQL Server. And there's two main products in the suite of Flow. One is called Ingest, and the other is called XL Ingest. And SingleStore is the target. So Ingest is a tool that allows you to capture the schema from the source and migrate it to the target, and also move small tables. In addition, it does continuous change data capture for tables of all sizes. XL Ingest is for moving large tables. So if tables are really huge, you have to use a divide and conquer approach to move the data, divide it into chunks and move the chunks in parallel and be restartable. So like if your source or target system crashes or the XL Ingest has to be restarted, it just picks up where it left off and keeps going. So XL Ingest are for moving large tables, and our rough cutoff for what we mean by large is about 10 gigabytes. And then we're focusing again on the SingleStore database target. So some use cases and benefits of Flow. Again, Flow is the package that contains both ingest and XL ingest. And Flow the Flow suite is a new product that we're selling, and it has its own SKU and its own pricing, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So the main use cases are for migration to SingleStore and real-time data transfer to SingleStore. So for migration, maybe you're migrating from, say, PostgreSQL onto SingleStore, and you may have got a PostgreSQL database that's moderately big, or maybe even very large, like several terabytes, and you want to move the whole thing onto SingleStore and sunset your PostgreSQL application. Maybe you're doing analytics with PostgreSQL and you feel like you can get that more economically with SingleStore, because SingleStore has column store, very high performance query execution, scale out. It's fantastic for real-time analytics. So with Flow, you can transfer the data from Postgres to SingleStore in hours, not days. So you don't have to write any scripts. Like if you're highly motivated, yeah, you can come and migrate your PostgreSQL data onto SingleStore, and it might take a week if someone who's a knowledgeable, person with some development skills to script out the create table statements, edit them so that they run on SingleStore, pick your keys on the target, and create the schema, then export the data from PostgreSQL into, say, CSV files, and then set up some SingleStore pipelines to load the data. And that's all doable. It all works. It just could take you several days or a week to do what you could do in a couple hours with Flow. So that's one of the main benefits of Flow is all the labor savings you can get, and also shortening your schedules to do a migration project. And so on the roadmap, we also have we will very soon have the ability to get data from any relational database or modern data warehouse using a JDBC connector. So JDBC is an interface that most relational database products support, and we'll be able to connect to a significantly broader variety of sources than those four once we have the JDBC up and working. That's coming pretty soon, like within, in the spring. We also have the ability to do real-time data transfer to SingleStore with no-code replication. So this is using log-based change data capture from these four sources. As the updates are applied in those four sources, we utilize the CDC capabilities of the upstream source database to capture what's been changed and migrate that continuously in real time into SingleStore. So if you have a use case where you maybe have say an Oracle system and you want to add real-time analytics capability, but don't want to sunset the Oracle system, you want to keep running maybe an operational workload on Oracle, but do analytics on a copy of that data that's in SingleStore, that's a great use case, and that can be enabled with Flow. So I mentioned Ingest and XL Ingest as the two main products in the Flow suite. It's got really high throughput. We've got examples of moving 1 million rows in 30 seconds, readily. That's not a limit of any kind. That's just one example real-time use case that we've done with one of our customers. So it's no code based on CDC. You can do it scheduled or real-time. It's multi-threaded and parallel, so you can load multiple tables in parallel, or for large tables with XL Ingest, you can do chunks in parallel. It creates tables automatically on the target. It does a smart type mapping, so it knows for the four source databases we talked about, we've looked at all their data types and do a smart mapping from the source data type to the appropriate data type inside SingleStore. And we also automate data extraction, CDC, merges into the target. So for example, like we basically do upserts onto the target. So if a row gets updated in the source, it's already been moved to the target, we'll do an upsert automatically. You can mask out certain columns if you don't want to bring the data in those columns. We also handle type 2 slowly changing dimensions and more various types of data transformations and movement. So we can also allow, with the type 2 slowly changing dimensions, you can bring over time series if you want to. Like if you want to create a new row every time an update happens on the source, you can do that. Or you can do upserts to overwrite the old version with the new version. And it's your choice. There's also automated network catch-up in case of any outage in the source, the target, or flow itself. The system, when the pieces come back up, they automatically reconnect and continue where they left off. All right. So let's talk about some comparison with major competitors. So Flow, for the SingleStore destination, not for other destinations, but for the SingleStore destination, we are competing to some extent with GoldenGate, Fivetran, and Qlik Replicate. So there are several benefits using Flow in this environment, like not all the sources that are available for Flow are available with these alternative products. And also the cost of doing things and the speed in which you can do things are better with Flow in many cases. So so moving on with this comparison with these three alternative products, the setup speed is much quicker. Like you can install Flow in just a few minutes and get going, within 1 hour easily, moving data. So, some of these products, I'm not gonna call out which one in particular, but one of them has a 500-page manual, and some scripting is required to do just about anything. And some of the people that are using Flow are like, well, is your product really comprehensive and complete? Because it doesn't have a 500-page manual. Don't we need a 500-page manual? No, you don't. Reading a couple pages or listening to a webinar and following the one-page installation guide, you can get it installed, connected, and start transferring data and doing CDC, without reading that huge manual. So we feel good about the cost, both the license cost as well as the minimal amount of labor that's required to set up and use Flow. So I'm going to demonstrate this for you, but just a quick overview of the kind of screens that you'll see in SingleStore Flow. The first one is ingest. So you see you've got a source and a destination that you configure. You configure which tables you want to migrate. You set up your schedule, like how often you want the data to be moved. And then you see the progress in the middle. XL Ingest, again, is for moving large tables. It has a screen that allows you to define slices. So you can define logical partition boundaries to define these slices. And then that splits your data up into sort of manageable size logical partitions, so you don't have to move all the data at once. And you can put in the slices yourself, or you can use auto slice to have us pick the slices. And SingleStore Control Room is coming soon. This is not delivered yet, but this is coming in the spring as well. If you have multiple instances of ingest running, as well as XL Ingest, and you want to sort of track them all and control them all, this is a sort of a single dashboard for doing that. A little more about the Flow roadmap. So in the first half of the year, we're working on tuning and robustness for the SingleStore target, and also adding control room. And we're creating a Helios Flow cloud service. So today you can install Flow yourself and run it for both SingleStore Helios destinations as well as self-hosted SingleStore destinations. But we're going to have a cloud service where it'll be fully automatic and provide great connectivity between both self-hosted source databases and very popular cloud databases like AWS RDS and SingleStore as the target. We're also going to build out JDBC source support, and that'll help you move data from Snowflake, BigQuery, Azure Synapse Analytics, and more. Also planning a MongoDB source for use with SingleStore Chi and also or SQL access to the same data once it's in SingleStore. So SingleStore Chi is our MongoDB compatible API for the SingleStore database. And we're also considering bringing out an SAP source, SAP application source, which talks to application APIs to get the data, as well as a SAP HANA database source. So depending on demand, we may reprioritize these and bring them out in different orders, but most of these will come in the first half of 2025. Things can change, but this is a likely roadmap for us at this point. And in the second half of the year, we're looking on making a SingleStore source and just generally responding to customer demand. So people are interested in SingleStore to SingleStore replication for all kinds of reasons, like they might want to like repartition their data, for example, or migrate from a newer version of SingleStore to an older version, or an older version to a newer version, where or maybe just replicate a portion of data from one SingleStore database to another. So there are many reasons that people might want to do a SingleStore to SingleStore, a logical replication. So the replication technology is divided into two broad categories. One is physical replication, which is like SingleStore's built-in features, like to replicate from one workspace to like a primary workspace to a replica workspace on SingleStore Helios Cloud, or our replicate database feature that we have for self-hosted. So in those physical replication strategies, the data is moved in sort of a binary format, and so the target database has to be exactly the same as the source. That's the same number of partitions, the same indexes, same number of tables. Everything must be the same. The software version must be the same, or no more than one version different as well. So physical replication has a lot of advantages in like speed and transactional consistency, but there's a whole other suite of replication technology out there, and which Flow is part of, and that's called logical replication. So Flow is a logical replication system. It doesn't require the source and target to be the same database brand, or even if it's SingleStore to SingleStore, eventually the same version or have the same indexes, etc. So both physical and logical replication are important and have their uses, and they're both necessary depending on the application and the requirements. A little bit about pricing. I'm not going to go into detailed dollar figures for pricing today, but let me talk broadly about the pricing approach that we have for Flow. So Flow is a new product. You purchase it separately from SingleStore Database or SingleStore Helios. We charge by the unit of the target SingleStore cluster or workspace. So the unit pricing is different and much lower than the price of the SingleStore, but we charge by the unit of the target. So we don't charge you by source system capacity. We don't charge by the number of rows that you move. We don't charge by the data volume that you move. You can use it as much or as little as you want. You pay one price per unit of time, whether that's monthly or annually, based on the size of your target. We're going to have an annual subscription for CDC use cases or otherwise frequent use. Like if you're using it for CDC, you're using it every day, you'll buy the annual subscription. If you want, you can purchase it by the month for migration. So say you're doing a migration and you think you're going to be done within 3 months. You could buy the monthly subscription for 3 months and then stop. And we have a 30-day free developer license for non-production use for learning and exploration or doing a proof of concept for that kind of thing. So if you want to get access to the product, contact your account team or email team@singlestore.com, and we'll help you get started. We'll get you a license, whether a free license or a paid license. And it's an opportunity for you to maybe consider saving money because it's much lower cost than GoldenGate and the other competitors we talked about typically. So again, contact us for details, your account team, or email team@singlestore.com. So quick summary before I go into the demo. Flow today consists of 2 major components: ingest for migrating schema and data in small tables, as well as doing CDC, and then XL Ingest, which is for moving large tables. It's easy to use. It's a no-code system to do data transfer. So people with IT skills that are just not necessarily developers can move data. And developers, whether even if you are a developer, hey, maybe you can do something in 4 hours that would have taken you 4 days. Otherwise, you can use that valuable time to speed up a project or spend time on other valuable things like building your application software. And we support these sources for the SingleStore destination: Oracle, Microsoft SQL Server, MySQL, and PostgreSQL. We've got economical per target unit pricing. So thanks for listening. And now I'm going to move to the demo. Okay. All right. So on the left here, I know it's a little small, but I'm going to take you first through how to use ingest. So on the left here, I've got a schema which is called purchasing. So there's a database. It's a sample database from Microsoft called AdventureWorks 2022. And within here, there's some schemas. So one of them is purchasing. All right. So over in SingleStore, we have so I've already dropped my data. I practiced this, so I dropped the purchasing database. There's no purchasing database over here. So I want to migrate purchasing over to SingleStore. So right now, purchasing is in SQL Server on the left, and I'm going to migrate it to SingleStore on the right. By the way, all of this is running on a Windows PC just to make the demo easier. SQL Server is running on this PC in a developer edition, and then Ingest and XL Ingest are running on a PC, and the target is running in Docker. It's a target developer edition SingleStore that's running in a Docker container also on the PC. So, but you can have the targets on servers, or in the case, the source can be on a server anywhere, and you can connect to it. And the target could be self-hosted SingleStore, as I'm showing you today, or it could be Helios. Doesn't matter. Either one works. So let's migrate some data. So here's the purchasing. So you see I'm viewing so actually, let me back up a second. Let me show you the dashboard. So this screen is the ingest main screen, the dashboard. So we've got source. So first, when you install ingest, you connect it to your source and destination. So you just fill out this form. It's the Microsoft SQL Server database source. We're using change tracking, the SQL Server change tracking feature to track deltas to the system. I entered my host name, port, the source database. I'm using the SA user here. The JDBC, you don't have to, you can use a different user as long as you give it the necessary permissions. And also JDBC options as appropriate to connect to that source. So I'm going to test my connection, and you see it gives me a nice green confirmation that the test succeeded. So now go back to the dashboard, go to destination. Let's connect to the destination. So it's a SingleStore destination. It's running on port 3306. I'm just going to connect to information schema. I'm using the root user, and I didn't have to fill any JDBC options. I can test that connection. It's all good. So I can connect to both my source and my target. The next step, so it has this nice checklist in the middle. So source and destination setup are done. Now I've already entered my license key. I'm not going to show you that, but if you go to settings, there's a place to enter your license key. Again, to get a license key, talk to team@singlestore.com or talk to your account team. We'll get you. You have to install Ingest and XL Ingest first, get the product IDs, and give it to us, and we will give you a license key. So let's look at the tables. So all right, so purchasing. Let's take a look at purchasing. So I want to move these 5 tables over. So, all right, so I selected those, I click apply, and now I'm going to go over to the dashboard, and I'm going to go to operations and click full extract. And that's going to start my transfer. If I go back to the dashboard, it says I've got 5 tables selected. So now it's showing my progress. It shows which tables have been extracted and then ultimately loaded into the target, or which are scheduled to run. So zip, 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 it's moved all the, it's moved the data over. Now it's going in to do delta extracts, which I don't have any. So I'm going to turn off my schedule so it's not going to do delta extracts. But anyway, let's go look at the SingleStore again. So let's see if that database is here. All right, so the data is there. All these tables are there. We can show that they have data. So there's the data. The data has been moved. All right, so we moved some data. We moved 5 tables in just a few minutes without writing any code. So how about that? Nice, huh? We can now go back and let's take a look at moving a big table. So XL Ingest is for moving those large tables. So this table, I'm going to show you on the left. There's a table, I put 1 million rows in it, and it's got ID numbers and GUIDs, but it's not really that big. You could move it with ingest if you wanted to, but just to illustrate on slightly large data how you can divide it into pieces and move it successfully, I'm going to show you how to do that. So let's move over to XL Ingest. So in this screen, we've selected the event table. That's the one that has 1 million rows in it, and it's got serial numbers in the column, the ID column. So I'm defining these slices, at every quarter, at every 250,000 or so items, I defined slice boundaries, and I have the slice is below the minimum number, and the right slice is above the minimum number, so that I get everything. So now that we've done this table setup, let's look at let's see the table status, table setup. Whoops. Okay, hang on a second here. I'm going to go back and change the tables that I've selected. Okay, I'm not using these anymore. Instead, I'm going to go to DBO, and I'm going to pick event. Okay, so you see that ingest and XL ingest cooperate. So XL ingest knows the tables that have been selected. So it sees that I've got these 4 slices, and now I can schedule them to sync if I want to. And if I just click sync selected and confirm, it'll start moving the data. So if I can look at the task status, and you see there's 4 tasks running here. So 3 of them completed. There's still 1 running, and the 4th one completed. So now we've moved those 4 slices over to SingleStore, and let's confirm that the data is there. So the table is called event underscore because event is a keyword in SingleStore. So it chose a different name in order to allow you to create, because you can't create a column called event in SingleStore without back quotes around it. So the default approach is we put an underscore on those keyword-based column names, but you can also configure it to use back quotes if you want to just have a quoted identifier. So let's see how much we've got here. Okay, so I've look at the right schema. There we go. So let's see how much data we got in event. All right, so we got all the data. Now I can do, just like I did on the source, I got the same count, I got the same number of distinct values in each column. So we moved a large table with XL ingest, and it can handle extremely huge tables, like multi-terabyte tables with a divide and conquer strategy. So next, I want to show how you can do change data capture. So I am selecting the table T now. So that T is a tiny table. I just want to show you the top 7 rows in T over in the source. I know it's kind of small, but the top value of A is 148, and they've got timestamps. And so I wrote a little script here basically to, insert 1 row a second, and, sleep between each insert for a second in order to show sort of a trickle of data coming from the source to the target. Let's see what we got over in the target. So back here, we've got, now the data is in sync, all right? 148 is the max on both sides. So let's see here. I'm going to go back to my dashboard. I'm going to turn the schedule on. And now I'm going to start moving data. I'm going to run this script over here in SQL Server that is going to start moving data. So you can see now there's a delta extract that's actually pulling some data. And you can see these green success status messages. And we can go over here and we can run this and we can see, oh, now the numbers are going up. Not 148, now the max is 162, 167. We just wait a little, wait a little while, we'll see that. So we're doing real-time change data capture from SQL Server and applying those changes to your SingleStore target database. Here we go. Let's see. So now So I've told you about SingleStore Flow. We can move data from Oracle, SQL Server, MySQL, and PostgreSQL with no code into SingleStore, whether in bulk for one-time transfer or large table transfer or continuous change data capture transfer to bring the data into SingleStore. So for both migration use cases as well as sort of enhancement use cases or augmentation use cases, SingleStore Flow is a great toolkit that allows you to move that data with no code. At this point, we got plenty of time for questions. So do we have any questions?
Eric, this is Akmal. So I see a couple of people asking about schema changes. How would these be handled, for example?
So schema changes typically be handled by some sort of reprovisioning process, but schema changes are not going to break the extraction because the columns, like the most common schema change is to add a column. That won't break things. It will just it'll just ignore that column. You can also, like, if you alter the data type on the source, but it's still compatible more or less, like you increase numeric precision or something, that can continue to work. But usually schema changes do require some sort of reprovisioning, but for basic changes, it should be okay and continue working at least without breaking.
So we actually are open for the Q&A session. So for everyone, I actually saw a couple of hands raised. So if you are currently in a listen only mode, so you will be able to ask questions to Eric or Akmal, or we also have Dylan through the Q&A button that is present at the bottom of your console. Eric, we actually have a lot of questions for you, and if you just let me know if you have the access to the Q&A console and you can pick out a question yourself, which you think might be really relevant.
Okay. Let's see. One is someone wanted to know if we could elaborate in terms of metrics. So yeah, we have metrics for like how many rows you've moved, how many megabytes of data you moved, and a time series graph of how much data was moved at various times. So those metrics are available on that main screen for ingest that I showed you. It'll show you, if you do CDC, it'll show you like you've been moving so many rows. So you can watch that screen, and if rows aren't moving and you think they should be moving, that could be a clue that you might need to go and do some troubleshooting. So yeah, we do have metrics, and then the control room component of the Flow package is coming this spring, has even more metrics. Someone asked, do you have any plans to implement AI in your workflow? Absolutely. So there's tremendous interest in using AI for software development generally, and using AI to reduce the labor costs and developing software and managing IT infrastructure. So the cool thing about Ingest and XL Ingest is that they're already no code, right? So why do you want to use AI to, often it's to write less code. Well, you don't have to write any code anyway. So, but in terms of configuration and monitoring, we're looking at ways to improve Flow with AI this year. Can this convert NiFi workflows? I don't have an answer for that. I don't know if anyone else has something they want to add about that. Someone else likes it. They said it's amazing, better than what they've used in the past with other migrations. We don't have a data change in the demo, right? And I didn't demonstrate a data update. I just did inserts, but updates work too. They work fine. So updates and deletes, all kinds of changes on the source can be replicated with change data capture to the target. Let's see. How fast is the average deployment? What is the end user usually working on? So we've got so I'm not sure I fully understand the question. It usually takes literally like a morning or less to set up the software. Like if you already know what you're doing, you can install it and start connect and start transferring in 10 or 15 minutes. If you're brand new to the software, you need to like explore the UI and the options that are available. If you're a qualified prospect or a paying customer, we'll help you get set up, and it might take a morning to get educated about how to install the product and how to connect and what it can do, and then be on your own and start moving data. What is the end user usually working on? Deployment, you have to connect to the source and the target, and you have to set up, like if you're doing SQL Server change data capture, for example, you have to enable change data capture on all the source tables that you want to be able to migrate changes for. And that requires some learning about how change data capture or change tracking works in SQL Server, just as one example. So then you have to set up your permissions correctly and the user that you want to use to connect and so forth, and enable change tracking for all the tables that you want to transfer data for. It takes some learning. There's a bit of a learning curve for that, but once you know that and you've got that stuff set up, it's no problem at all. Every time you run the task, will it drop the tables on SingleStore and create it? No. So normally, like you can set up the target on the SingleStore and set up a source on a source database. You initially transfer the data in Schema, and then you drop into CDC mode, and it just transfers the changes. And if you stop it and start it again, it's not going to recreate the data on the target. It'll just pick up with CDC. All right. There's a rhetorical question about whether we need interns. Let's see, is CDC by default? Or let's see, hang on one second. I think I kind of answered that already. It says CDC by default, or is there some special setup to be done for SQL Server to SingleStore? It is by default, but you do have to set up change tracking on the source tables you want to be able to pull data from. So I guess it's a little of both. Let's see. How about replicating back from SingleStore database to the original database? And also restoring back from migrated database from let's see. So I think the question is, yes, it's about what sources and targets we're going to be able to support. So today we support those 4 relational database sources and a SingleStore target. We're going to focus our energy on the SingleStore target, both SingleStore self-hosted and SingleStore Helios. But we are considering other destinations. So, but we don't have any fixed timelines for that. I think the biggest source that we're going to probably add in second half of the year is the SingleStore source to do continuous CDC from SingleStore into a SingleStore destination with logical replication. So you could like just do subsets of the tables, or not all the tables, or move from like one software version to another, or you've got 4 partitions on one system and you want 12 on the destination. That kind of thing could be done with SingleStore to SingleStore. How does Flow automatically detect the table relationships? The data integrity is not broken. So So it's a logical replication system. We're not necessarily tapping, and we're not necessarily bringing over source transactions all in one piece. So anyway, that, what you might, if you have like orders and line items and there's a foreign key constraint, we might bring over, data from the same transaction at slightly different times. So it's repeatable, and we'll bring over all the changes, but the transactional boundaries might be a little different on the source and target. So you might not want to enforce referential integrity on the target necessarily if you've got it on the source, depending on whether or not that caused trouble. How can the field delimiter be changed? I think the default is vertical bar. So we just recently, in the last couple of weeks, switched to using Avro to transfer the data. So that doesn't use any delimiter. It's not sensitive to delimiters. Okay. Any other questions? Don't be shy. We got plenty of time. Hey, if you want a free 30-day trial, just contact your account team or just email team@singlestore.com and we'll help you out. And you can go to our documentation for Flow. It's all documented in the SingleStore documentation pages, and it tells you how to download the software. And you just install it, and then you can go into the configuration screen, get the product ID, email us the product ID. We'll email you a trial license. Can users implement role-based access controls for different migration tasks? Currently, the security, so Flow itself doesn't have a user access model. It's just you install it on one machine and control access to that machine to control who has access to Flow. And then Flow can do whatever on the database source and target. Flow can do whatever your the user IDs can do that are accessing the source and the target, but of course it's going to limit and constrain what it does just to do the minimum necessary to transfer data. So Flow runs on Flow. So Flow is implemented in Java, and so it can run on any operating system that can run a Java jar. It's very flexible about that. It's got a nice. It does have a ability to install as a Windows service. So if you're using Windows to run Flow, that's probably the easiest because you can start the service, start and stop the service. But it also will run on Linux. And you can just start a process, run the jar, and leave the window open or fork it into the background and pipe the output streams to files. And in the installation directory, one thing I didn't show in the demo, but there's a logs screen where you can see the successful, success and error messages that are output by Ingest and XL Ingest. And it has in the installation folder, it's got a logs folder that you can see the application logs, going back, for days. Does Flow need to install source machine? I'm not sure I understand that, but you can install Flow on Windows or Linux and it'll run fine.
I think maybe the question there, Eric, was actually installing it on the machine where you are doing the ingest from, if you like, the source. But I don't think so. I mean,
okay, I think I understand now. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So it's important that you install Flow very near the source machine. It's very chatty with the source machine. It goes back and forth a lot. So, like if you're, like say you're running your source and your target on AWS, you're running Flow on a different machine on AWS, you should be fine because, they're all, very close to each other on the network. But, if you're moving data from like one data center to another, like one cloud region to another, you should install Flow in the same region as your source. Or if it's in the same, if you're trying to, move data from a source to a target, don't install Flow on your PC and have it pull data down and then upload it back to the cloud. That's not going to be fast for a large data volume. So you should install Flow on a machine right next to the source machine. It could be on the same machine, but it can be on another machine on the same local area network, very close to it with a good network connection. Will this also be available on other platforms than Helios? So yeah, you can self-host it. You can install and run Flow yourself. And the destination could be SingleStore self-hosted or SingleStore Helios. And then soon, I can't quote you a date, but in the not too distant future, we'll have a Helios cloud service for Flow. You won't have to install it and run it. One thing I didn't mention is that you'll need to provision hardware to run Flow. So typical size would be about a quarter as much hardware as you're using for the SingleStore target. So like suppose you're using 1 unit of SingleStore, that's 8 virtual CPUs. So a good rule of thumb for starting point would be use 2 virtual CPUs for the for running Flow. Or if you've got, an S4 with 32 virtual CPUs, maybe use 8 virtual CPUs to run Flow. But, you can adjust to your own requirements. You might need less. Like once CDC is going, a lot of times there's not a very heavy CDC workload. So you might, have a huge target system, but still might only need 2 cores or 4 cores for ongoing CDC because it's just not that much work. Okay. Any other questions? Can you define custom transformations within SingleStore Flow, such as data masking or enrichment? So masking, yes, you can mask out like certain fields if you don't want to bring them over. As far as enrichment is concerned, no. So we're focusing on Flow as not a full-blown ETL tool, but instead a data transfer tool. So we're limiting the scope of what you can do to just bringing the columns over, but not doing arbitrary functions on the columns or transformations. Here's a question about does Flow have a UI or wireframes? I don't know the answer about wireframes, but yeah, it has a UI that I demoed today. And it is a low-code, no-code application. You don't have to write code to migrate the data. Any other questions?
All right,
Hey,
it looks we don't have.
perfect timing. I think the questions are done, so I'll hand it back to you, Yukti.
Awesome. So thanks, Eric, for such an amazing session. To everyone listening, if you have any other questions, feel free to email us at team@singlestore.com. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can connect with Akmal on LinkedIn. If there's any feedback regarding the session that you would like to convey to us, if there's anything else that you want to take up, we are just a text away. Just message me on LinkedIn or anyone on the panel, and we'll be happy to assist you all. You all will receive a recording or any other resources that were related to this webinar. Eric, please send them to me, and I'll make an email out of it, and we'll send it out to everyone that has registered And obviously those who have not also been able to attend, a recording will go out to everyone. So yeah, this was an amazing session, Eric, super informative, and thanks everyone for joining. Thank you so much and have a great rest of the day. Take care, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.